Last year, I talked about the ASUS Zenbook A14, and I called it the MacBook Air killer. Now, some of you kind of missed the point, some of you flamed me pretty hard, but that's okay. In this video, I want to talk to you about the new ASUS Zenbook A14 and how they've made this tiny little ARM-driven Windows laptop even better. And I want to tell you why and how I've been using this laptop now for the last 4 months. Now, this video is sponsored by ASUS, but that doesn't mean that I can't be honest. In fact, when I talked about this laptop last year, it was not sponsored. And despite the complaints that I had, ASUS reached out to me just because they liked the video. And to be fully transparent, this laptop isn't perfect, and I'll definitely tell you why in this video, but I also want to show you what it excels at, and in some cases, why I actually prefer the A14 to some other laptops. So let's get into it. There's something incredible about this laptop from the moment that you pick it up that's kind of shocking. It's incredibly light. In fact, it actually comes in at just under a single kilogram, weighing in at 990 grams. Whether you're carrying this around the house, or you're taking it to a coffee shop, or you're lugging it around the world in a backpack, you almost don't notice that it's there. And there have been times I've had to double check my bag because I'm not used to it being as light as it is. For context, the laptop that I used to make this video is the M4 Pro fully maxed out MacBook Pro 14-inch. This thing is about 1.6 kilograms, or 60% heavier than the A14. And while yes, these are two entirely different laptops meant for entirely different use cases, that doesn't mean the A14 is a stripped down hunk of junk. Actually, even down to the materials, this thing feels super premium. It's using what's called Ceraluminum, which, without getting insanely technical, is a blend between ceramic and aluminum through a very specialized oxidization process, which means that this isn't a coating. It holds up like aluminum, it has a really nice stone-like texture, which is resistant against scratches and fingerprints, but it also doesn't have the negative traits of aluminum, like always feeling super cold to the touch, which could be a surprise on your legs when you're using it and you're wearing shorts. In terms of the look and feel, the A14 is a very premium device, even down to the display. Despite this being in the low mid-range price point of Windows laptops, you would never get the impression from actually using it. It has a beautiful 1200p OLED panel, which is 14 inches, and it's also taller with a 16:10 resolution, which I much prefer on a laptop so you have more vertical screen real estate. I will say that the panel is actually slightly on the warmer side. This can be changed in Windows using its calibration settings, but things can lean a little too red if you don't take the time to do this. It's something that I did have to adjust when I started watching some of my content back, and I noticed how off it seemed, but at the same time, despite it being like inaccurate out of the box, I actually think this punchy look is preferred by a lot of people. If you're gonna do things like photo editing though, this is something that I would keep in mind and change just so you get a more accurate image. However, I think I'm getting ahead of myself because I haven't even told you what's inside of the A14. So what makes this laptop really interesting could actually be a slight drawback for some of you, though it's what makes this very compelling for me despite its shortcomings. So this is using the new Snapdragon X2 Elite SoC. Now I say SoC because it's not a processor. This entire thing is an ARM-based system on a chip, more akin to something like your smartphone, except a lot more powerful than your smartphone. Yet it's also way more efficient than something like a traditional x86 chip found in something like an Intel processor or from AMD. And it uses only a 20 to 40 watt targeted TDP, which is very low power for a laptop. It has 18 cores using a 3nm process and 5 GHz clock speeds, which makes its per core performance actually kind of insane. And if you're someone that cares about AI at all, it actually has an 80 TOPS NPU, which is pretty damn impressive for a thin and light form factor laptop. Now, thankfully, these days, Windows on ARM is actually quite good, and a lot of apps support it natively or through something called a translation layer, which basically emulates x86 applications. Now, I want to be clear, this laptop is not for everyone. Although this is a plenty capable chip, it's not targeted at people who do gaming, even though it can actually play some video games, nor is this targeted as a way to step into something like content creation, except it can handle some light tasks in applications like Lightroom and DaVinci Resolve. This laptop is more so targeted at someone who's on the go a lot. Someone like a student or a real estate agent or a social worker, someone who might have been inclined to purchase a device like the MacBook Air. So funny story about this exact situation. My wife uses this MacBook Air I got her for her birthday a while back, and she's actually doing a program for open source intelligence. The MacBook Air that she was using didn't support her programs, and the thing is, she only has a 256 gig SSD, so she couldn't use something like Parallel parallels to run a virtual machine, or else it just gets super complicated and eats up her entire storage. So last year I gave her the original Zenbook A14 and she loved it. The irony in it though is that not only did it do exactly what she needed it to do, but in some ways she actually liked it more. There's an HDMI 2.1 port so she could connect it to her high refresh rate OLED monitor. It has two USB-C ports, a Type A so she could use her mouse without relying on Bluetooth, and of course it has a headphone jack. I also made a point in my last video about this before I handed it off to her that she needed a solid webcam, which of course this has, along with a button to disable the webcam and mute her microphone directly on the keyboard, along with Windows Hello to log in for facial recognition, which could actually turn on and off the display whether she's looking at it or if she's walked away, which is solid for what her work contains, which often involves a lot of sensitive information. And you also get the noise cancelling microphone and the ability to blur backgrounds baked into the hardware versus needing to rely on other applications. And in some ways, despite her being so used to the MacBook, she actually did prefer the A14 over her Air, because for her, it just did what she needed it to do better. And in her line of work, in social work now, using a Windows laptop makes more sense since these companies aren't using Macs. As for how I've been using this new A14 though, well, I know this sounds silly, but because of how much smaller this laptop is and how much less of a burden it is to actually lug it around compared to my 14-inch MacBook, it's the laptop that I've been using out of the house. It's what I take with me to go to a coffee shop, and when I go on a trip, if I know that I don't need to edit any content, it's what I use for my notes and for planning, and it's how I manage things like my Notion, and I even use it to edit photos. It's been the machine that I use to stay on top of all of my emails, and in a lot of ways, it's where I consume a lot of my content. A lot of this is because of its portability, but a lot of this is also because of what ASUS has done right here with the A14. Take the keyboard, for example. It has way more travel than something like the MacBook. It doesn't feel snappy, and it has a little bit of a softer touch. The keys are pretty large, and it has really clear backlighting, and it's ultimately just very comfortable to type on. I've written a lot on the A14, and I very much prefer it to my MacBook. Actually, I think the quality of the keycaps are better as well. I don't see any oil stains, it's super easy to clean, and it has almost this soft touch texture to it that I really enjoy. There isn't a ton of deck flex either. It does feel super sturdy, and overall, it's a solid 9 out of 10 in terms of the typing experience. I wish the trackpad was as solid as the keyboard on the A14. It's still using a diving board style keyboard like last year, which I did complain about, but you can click around pretty much anywhere with the same amount of pressure, and it's still very acceptable. Last year, I did say that this was like the best diving board style trackpad that I've ever used. I think that might still be true. I can say aside from how it physically presses, it is very accurate, and actually interacting with the cursor does feel very good. If you use a Windows laptop, chances are you haven't really experienced a haptic trackpad, so you're probably just confused at what I'm blabbing about anyways, but if it helps, it is a solid trackpad. Text and content also look very good. It's a 600 nit display, which is pretty bright. It's 60 Hz, which I don't mind on a laptop that's in this class. I don't think 120 Hz is necessary, especially if you're just doing some light work like writing, consuming content, and so on, especially since it would just increase the price of the A14. But at its FHD resolution with this display size and its OLED panel, it's incredibly sharp. It has very good contrast, and overall, it's just very enjoyable to actually use, which is the most important thing to me. Now, it's not a touchscreen, which I would have liked to see, to be completely honest. It would have added a good flexibility to how you actually interact with it, but it's not necessarily a deal breaker for me. I mean, even the MacBook that I use, which costs significantly more money, isn't a touchscreen. And it is also nice to know that when I take this laptop around with me, I don't need to worry about bringing along its included 65-watt power adapter because the battery life is so damn good. Now, it's a 70-watt-hour battery, which isn't the largest in a laptop, but when you consider the size and the weight along with the sheer efficiency of this chip, if you're just in like a Word doc all day, I don't think you're going to be able to kill this battery. Even when you're watching YouTube videos or scrolling through social media, I find it very hard to actually drain this laptop. The only time that I ever see this thing actually break a sweat is when I'm using something like Lightroom and handling 50+ megapixel raw images, but that makes sense. Like, the more you throw at this thing, the more power it's going to need to pull from, and the less the battery will last you. But I've been really impressed with the A14 to the point where I don't even think about its battery life. And as someone that uses a MacBook, that's something that's made it quite hard for me to go back to when using a Windows laptop. I want to have the flexibility to work anywhere, and just get what I need done. And realistically, you could do that with the A14. In fact, if I didn't need to hold the A14 in this video to talk about it, you wouldn't actually be seeing it, because where it mostly lives is on this desk hidden underneath my camera. I use it as my teleprompter. I use it to record into when it comes to the Rodecaster, which is how my microphone picks up audio using the Audacity application. And it really has become like a really big focal point into how I actually make these videos. I'm not exaggerating when I say this laptop has become crucial to me, and it's something that I've genuinely been using for the last 4 months. Now, I do think there's a couple areas ASUS could improve on the A14. For one, it has downward firing speakers. It's not like they're bad, they're actually quite good, but they're pushing the audio away from you, which can make it sound a little muffled or a little less full, especially if you're using it on your lap where you might be covering up the speakers themselves. And although the Ceraluminum finish is very scratch resistant, you don't pick up like a lot of fingerprint oils, and it's not going to get as grimy as something like my MacBook does. I will say that when it comes to like staining, you can tell over time that what you're doing does have an impact on the Ceraluminum finish. But like once a month, I'll use something like Whoosh. I'll just spray it on. Just got that everywhere and wipe it down. It really does a good job at getting everything out of these kind of like cracks and crevices that come from this finish from Ceraluminum, and then it looks brand new again. It is kind of a minor gripe. All laptops get dirty, but I thought I would mention it. But yeah, now it's a brand new laptop. Anyways though, if you're looking for something that you could travel with, take to class, and you don't need to run crazy demanding programs, and you just want something that's sleek, has a nice keyboard and a beautiful display, as well as really solid battery life, I think the A14 is actually worth looking into. My opinion on this laptop doesn't change just because ASUS sponsored this video. I would not be using this laptop personally behind the scenes for the last 4 months if I didn't think this laptop was actually worth using and if I didn't enjoy it. So I definitely do think there's value in the A14. Let me know what you think about it in the comments down below. Thank you ASUS for sponsoring this video, and like always, a like and sub to the channel goes a very long way. If you've made it all the way to the end, consider dropping a turtle emoji down below so I know who the real ones are, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.